Man, I can't describe how much of a Jet Set Radio fan I am. It was around 2013, 2014, most likely 2014, that I was fully introduced to the wonderful world of Jet Set Radio. I was familiar with some elements beforehand, like Let Mom Sleep, and Beat, who was in Sega Superstars Tennis. I would use Beat as my main in that game, I loved it. But it introduced me to that world, and I was interested, but I could never find out more due to not having the internet back in 2010. When I got a Dreamcast in 2013, and then later got Jet Set Radio, I was in love. My hunt for a copy of Jet Set Radio Future, the sequel, would take a long time, queue copies becoming rarer, one copy never even arriving in the mail, and moving from house to house, and I just couldn't get my hands on it. It was around 2015 or 2016 that I finally managed to get my hands on that game, and once again, I was in love. While I could go on forever and ever about Jet Set Radio and the sequel, Future, is not the topic of today's video. Rather, thinking about Jet Set Radio Future thanks to my Twitter feed recently, led me to remember a series of interesting events that reinvigorated my interest in a mystery that has never been solved. One that exists in Jet Set Radio Future, but has never had any explanation or resolution. Allow me to introduce you to Jet Set Radio Future's forgotten mystery. The Doomsday Clock. My history with this myth is interesting, to say the least. Having gotten my hands on Jet Set Radio Future around 3 or 4 years ago now, I can't recall ever really hearing about the myth at that particular point in time, although it was at some point in those 3-4 years that I had learned of the existence of the Doomsday Clock. It was around 3 months ago now, as of the time of this video's making, I came across a post on r/creepygaming, a subreddit that I occasionally visit on my Reddit account, where I was reminded of the Doomsday Clock. The post soon became filled with speculation, even myself joining in on it. After all, we had no answers as to what the purpose of this thing was. This is what instigated me to begin my own search for answers. Inputting a quick search for Doomsday Clock into Google will not give you much relevant results, but adding Jet Set Radio onto that will send you to search results with, interestingly, a link to a NeoSeeker page posted 1 year after the release of the game, 2003. It reads as follows: I read on a JSRF walkthrough something about a quote-unquote Doomsday Clock. The OP then goes on to describe the section in which he has pasted. The Doomsday Clock is in Kibogaoka Hill. On the top floor, after you grind the massive power pylons, grind the top outer right line to get there. The clock has Daruma Watch on the bottom. Daruma was a great Zen teacher. The clock starts at 5:58 whenever you enter the level. Get to the clock within 2 minutes, it hits 6 o'clock. And watch what happens. Much like those on the r/creepygaming post, this link from 2003 also speculates on why the clock is there to begin with, or what purpose it has, if any. The information on the Doomsday Clock was taken from an old IGN walkthrough post, to which it seems to be the source. I did try and dig for earlier mentions, but if they do exist, they seem to have been long lost in the internet. What's interesting to note is that this walkthrough is most likely where the name Doomsday Clock originated. My search across the internet leaving me with very little results on who actually coined the name. While it is possible that the name was created in small fan circles and then spread across the internet, thanks to the walkthrough post, I cannot verify that as the truth, if that is the case. The wording on the walkthrough is written in a way that makes the OP seem like they have encountered the clock many times before, which is interesting. More on this later. Through Google search, unlike the Mometsuto myth from the previous episode, there is very little information on the Doomsday Clock. Wanted to scour through the ripped data of Jet Set Radio Future myself to see if I could find any references to the clock within it. I went through on the cutting room floor page on the game, but I received little to no results. With the Jet Set Radio fanbase being quite large, I naturally expected there to be videos of the Doomsday Clock in action. And I was right. Searching for the Doomsday Clock with the context of Jet Set Radio behind it gives you the particular video which has become infamous for showing this mystery. While the quality is less than stellar, it manages to show the clock in action to a good degree, at least. The clock opens, spins, and then closes, nothing happening after. To verify this on better quality in case somehow, this was faked, just to see if I could erase that possibility, I actually looked at the video made by False Proof on the glitches, secrets and more on Jet Set Radio Future. Brilliant video, by the way, go and give it a watch. To which they were also incredibly stumped at the mystery behind the clock. With dead ends after dead ends, the information that I expected to be there to give us enough clues as to find out the reason why this mystery existed in the first place, being nowhere, and my search for it had unfortunately ended quicker than I expected. Compared to my search for information on Mometsuto, my previous video, this search was a lot shorter than I expected, which is a shame really. I expected there to be a lot more clues, but weirdly enough there was less clues than I expected. With reminding myself of the lore of Jet Set Radio Future, plus some other aspects, my search would become speculation, and I believe I may have some possible suggestions, theories even, as to why the clock exists, or what its purpose was, or going to be. My first attempt at getting some answers was to actually find other Jet Set Radio Future fans. What I wanted to know was if a certain piece of information was actually accurate or not. And by getting verification on if it was accurate or not, I would be able to draw some reasonable conclusions. The information in question came from the original walkthrough posted in IGN, reading as follows, quote, "There is a weird symbiosis with the clock in Kiwagaoka Hill. If you do a test run for Kiwagaoka Hill, the clock in Rokaku Dai Heights simultaneously happens to reset at the same time as Kiwagaoka Hill." End quote. Curious about this, I attempted to ask r/Jet Set Radio about it, to which I got no answers. Seems people were just as stumped as I was. My next attempt would be joining the r/Jet Set Radio Discord, seeing if there was any possible way to test this on an actual copy. While I do have a copy of Jet Set Radio Future myself, it is stored away in storage. My search for answers on this would lead me to the wonderful folks on there who decide to lend a hand with verifying the legitimacy of this. Go join their Discord, by the way, it's really nice. Users Atobe Hunter, Funky Dealer, and Edge in Essence helped me give some possibilities on if this was true or not. Atobe Hunter providing footage of getting to the Rokaku Dai Heights clock within 2 minutes, thereby this proving that the player would be able to make it to both to verify that they reset at the exact same time. Therefore, the symbiosis did not actually exist. The IGN information seems false. With this information proven as far as we know, false, it would be from here that I began to speculate about the clock more. I have a few theories on what this clock was supposed to do, what it was supposed to be. The first is that it was meant to be an element of the game that would serve to show off the power of the Xbox. What do I mean? Allow me to elaborate. The predecessor to Jet Set Radio Future, Jet Set Radio, had very little functionality that really bolstered and showed off the power of the system, save for maybe showing off the online component, but let's not get too specific. However, other Dreamcast games did, like Seaman. Seaman is a game where you care for a virtual creature, and with the power of the inbuilt clock of the Dreamcast, the game and the creature changes in real time. With the Xbox being more powerful than the Dreamcast ever was, and having an inbuilt clock of its own, it's not entirely out of the realm of the possibility to speculate that the Doomsday Clock was actually meant to be a way to show off the power of the system by being able to show that the clock in real time could affect the world of the game in real time as well. My second theory is that it was an unused mission that would have had you racing from one clock to the other, Rokaku to Kibogaoka, in which getting there on time would result in the mission being a success. It was really not uncommon for games in the 6th generation being prone to unused levels or areas that were simply never dummied out. So for example, .hack GU, some of the parts have unused areas with enemies that don't have names. Crash to Insanity as remnants of cut levels, so on and so forth. For a Sega game, it really would not be too surprising for levels and entire missions to be cut. The original version of Windy Valley from Sonic Adventure was entirely cut, replaced with a different version. So it would not be surprising to me if the Doomsday Clock and the Rokaku one were originally meant for a mission that ended up being cut. My third theory is that this was meant to be a story-specific mission, or it's actually supposed to be an integral part of the story. Without spoiling too much for those who haven't played the game, the endgame boss arises after an extensive plan by the main antagonist to accomplish his goal. Those who have played the game, you know what I'm referring to. Could it be that the clocks were meant to be there for story purposes, to count down to the finale, to allude to the end of the game? My final theory is that the Doomsday Clock was intentionally put in the game as a way to keep people talking about it. Other oddities within Jet Set Radio Future include the statue that does nothing when you knock it over, the pit full of cats, etc. So what better way to keep interest in a game alive by having so much weird little moments in there? It gives people new material to speculate on. One thing that always caught my attention with this case was the name. Doomsday Clock. Seems to have originated from the walkthrough, but why Doomsday Clock? I can't really give a reason behind why it's named this way. Since there are no early sources, I cannot really go back through time and dig for the information that points to why X reason is the reason for this being named this way. But I think the idea of a clock that nobody knows what it's ticking to, if it will end up doing something, a clock to an inevitable doom that may or may not exist. Is this the reason why people seem to vaguely remember it? I've talked to a few Jet Set Radio fans in the past, and bringing up the Doomsday Clock, they vaguely remember it, but they don't know the full story. It's interesting to me. Whatever the case for the existence of the Doomsday Clock, myself and many Jet Set fans have been mystified for years. A clock that nobody knows what it's there for. An enigma in a vast world provided by Jet Set Radio Future. Remains unknown, 17 years later. A mystery that manages to outlive the game it came from. One that is very much unknown. Not much information exists. Will we ever manage to truly decipher what the clock was for? I am not sure, but personally, our best bet would be finding a developer who worked for the game. SEGA themselves. But for now, the Doomsday Clock ticks on. The purpose of it still shadowed.